Channel 7 is pleased to present Austin Faith Dialogue, brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries. In the weeks ahead, you will see these and other programs by various denominations.
Are you more likely to talk to your hairstylist about personal concerns than to your pastor? Some people indicate that they are. Please join us on this edition of Austin Faith Dialogue with Faith at Work.
This is Austin Faith Dialogue, a public affairs program discussing the important crossroad of religion in life, produced by Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTBC-TV. Austin Faith Dialogue highlights the interaction of the religious community with the social and cultural issues throughout our area. Now, today's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue.
Hairstylists may not seem likely candidates for discussing personal concerns. But then again, finding an open ear and someone to listen to the details of a stressful day or a current dilemma has been for many a welcomed relief. I'm Richard Thompson, pastor of Central Presbyterian Church and your host for this edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. And with me in the studio today are three individuals who have offered an open ear as stylists, and it's their stories of the types of concerns they've listened to that we'll spend the next few minutes talking about. I'm delighted to welcome Manette Morales, who's been a stylist for over 30 years and is the co-owner of Avalon Hair Salon. We also are welcoming Catherine Esquivel, a stylist at Avalon, and we are welcoming John Michael, who works there as well. And would like to welcome you all and to say that I've been looking forward very much to our conversation about just how much is represented in your work besides what is advertised as fixing people's hair.
Right.
And how long have you been doing this, Catherine?
I've been in the business 12 years.
Okay.
12 years.
And Nat, we said you were...
Almost 30.
Almost 30? Okay. And John?
I've been in 12 also.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And before the show started, you were saying, John, that you were comparing notes at your place of work, all the folks that work there, and how many years is represented?
We have over 100 years in our salon of experience, which is, and we don't have that many people, so you know, it's a pretty vast range to draw from.
Okay. And it's not just that you have a century worth of work that's represented, but what happens in between almost what you're doing with people, the personal relationships that you have.
Right.
I'd like to just have you maybe continue for a moment in terms of your work from 9 to 5 sort of thing, with people coming in. How many people would you see a day?
It varies on different days. I think 22 is the most I've ever seen in one day. But it could be, you know, 5. It just depends on the process that you're doing, whether it's a fast process or a time-consuming process.
All right, but let's say if you've got that many people to see, you see...
Average 10 a day.
10 a day
10 a
probably
day.
is good.
Is
All right,
good.
now, it would seem to me that, does this give you much time to really interact with folks?
Over 45 minutes.
I mean, because while you work, you talk.
Yes.
And you're not just talking about, should I put this hair over there or that one here? I mean, it's...
We spend about maybe 10 minutes elaborating on that, and then after that, it's just kind of like a free time where we do a little bit of socializing with the client.
Well, my experience, and one reason that we are just so glad to have you on Austin Faith Dialogue, is that I have known over the years how sometimes hairstylists can almost be like counselors with folks. I mean, you don't label yourself as that, but that they will talk to you about what's going on in their lives and how they're feeling, and that somehow you are not only spatially close, but that you are, in a sense, spiritually close to them as they are confiding in you or just, you know, sharing things with you.
Right. You're inside their personal space.
Okay.
Everyone has their boundaries, and we, as professionals, are allowed inside that boundary because we have to go inside the boundary and rearrange their hair, basically. You have to fix them, make them look better,
Okay.
take care of them.
So you have state certification
Right.
to get in somebody's personal space.
Right.
And when you do that, and when you literally put your hands on their body, then that does something to release tension,
It
to
relaxes them.
relaxes.
It's almost like a healing process that they go through.
Right.
And then what kinds of experiences have you had with people once they are so relaxed and ready to?
Well, a lot of times they're so relaxed, they start to open up. They'll open up and they start talking about things, you know, of their personal lives and experiences that they're going through, good and bad. And that's when we're in a position where we're able to listen to them. And, you know, that helps them a lot. Just having an open ear, just
They
listening
tell us
to
things
them.
that they can't share with their families or friends, like secrets sometimes, or some things that need to get off their chest. I think that's what we listen to.
I mean, at the opening I said sometimes, and I would guess more often than not, people will talk more often to someone that's in a relationship like that than they will a clergy person who's kind of sometimes seems like up there and above them or beyond them in some way, and you're right there with them.
They're able to open up easier,
More natural.
more naturally, right?
And maybe we don't seem as threatening or as, we seem more like we may have been there.
You know what they're talking about?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's something else too. I have had the sense that we're in a culture that is just starved for touch. I think it's been called
that's
skin
true.
hunger by psychologists.
Could be.
That's
Could be.
interesting.
Yeah.
I've never heard that, but it sounds about right.
Yeah, and that, you know, we've been kind of trained to keep our distance.
Right.
In big cities, you can see how people just
Right.
really are very skilled at missing each other. And that it's, you always run the risk of being misunderstood if you know, are too familiar or something like that.
Right.
So but nevertheless, our bodies are really craving touch. That's caring. And
That's true.
And I have a hunch. We've talked about this a bit, Annette, at one time or another, of how just that is in itself healing and welcoming.
A license for them to start talking and opening up. It's also because we see them on a regular basis, most of the time every 6 weeks, so it's somebody that's not in their inner circle, but yet they see on a regular basis.
Familiar enough. They're familiar enough with us that on a timely, when they come in on a timely basis, you know, they can talk, catch up on what's going on.
They're keeping their appointments with you to have their talk as well as to have their hair done.
And a lot of it is because they trust us. They trust us to
You keep
come in.
confidences.
Right.
yes.
You're like a priest in that regard. I mean, you are a pastor otherwise.
You better keep your trust. You can't.
Yeah, that's right.
Because sometimes we do the spouses, the husband and wives, of, and you can't tell each other what they were talking
You
about
get
the
in
last
big trouble
meeting.
that way.
We talked about that the other night at a client stylist confidentiality. You know, just like going to a therapist. If you go to a therapist, you tell them things, and they're not, you know, they're not going to go and tell everybody else. It's just that confidence that.
That's their own personal business. That's their own life. That's their life. And we're not at liberty to share that with other
anybody
people.
else.
Right.
Because that's their personal, it's their personal space.
And they trust
that's
us.
not anybody else's.
And you're not trying to kind of coach them to tell you stuff. I mean,
no,
they're just doing
no.
it.
No.
And,
Sometimes you really don't want to know.
Yeah. You'd rather not have heard it. Whoops.
So you just listen and you go,
Well, you know, the thing, too, that this strikes me, the parallels that you have with people who are in the counseling field, the confidences that they tell you, and also the listening skills. And I think that you probably instinctively have some awareness of how you listen well to people. What would be some of those practices that you have that you bring into play as you know, are open to folks and trying to be relating to them as persons and not just as clients?
Well, I think it would start off with, you know, when we see them as a client, we need to be able to listen to them about their needs as far as their image, their looks, and once they can feel like we can listen and they can communicate to us what their needs are, once that business is over, then that's when they're able to open up and trust us and be able to talk, and then of course we continue to listen. We have to be able to listen to begin with so we can understand what their needs are as far as their hair, their look.
Okay, so the listening in that regard, if they come in, they say, I would like to have you cut off all my hair, or cut it so short that nobody would recognize me, or whatever. Well, instead of just taking the scissors out and doing it, you
kind of need to know why they want to do it. When someone comes in and asks for something, especially if you know them and they're a regular client, and they come in and they want something radically different, and you think,
it's not like that.
Yeah, this is not like this person to want this. You kind of have to decide why they want that, and make sure that they actually want their hair cut short and they're not actually looking for something else.
And have you had experiences that is, if you stopped and talked to people like that, you find that something else is going on?
Yes, yes.
Has more to do than just with...
You have to kind of read between the lines and do some guesswork that they will like. They will like their hair or the change or the different color instead of cutting their hair all off. There are other alternatives.
Yeah. So as you explore these alternatives, they may begin to tell you, I'm suffering from a terrible case of self-image, or something like that.
Yes, exactly.
And they may not be able to tell you that, but you may be able to observe that in their dialogue. And then you realize, oh, you know, this is a self-image thing.
Yeah.
And then you have to kind of go on the grounds of that.
And maybe guide them, maybe understand that they do want to change, but maybe not that drastically, and then guide them into a change that's maybe a subtle, enough of a change for them where they'll be happy with themselves and go out with a better self-image, but yet not be so drastically changed that, you know, it'll throw them into shock.
Yeah.
And maybe make them more depressed.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. They walk out feeling worse rather than better.
Right.
Well, I also have a sense that are we assuming this is all women we're talking about?
No.
We do a lot of
not
men.
at all.
Young people, older people.
We do a lot of children also.
Yes.
Well, and yeah, just people. I mean, from this big to men, women, children, they're all people.
I mean,
yeah. They're all people, and they all have needs and desires and an image, and they're...
Self-esteem.
Yeah, everybody has that. And just because they're a man or a woman doesn't distinguish that they don't have an image problem or a, you know, something they would like.
And a good image need. I mean, we're all needing to
feel good
look our
about
best,
yourself.
which means feeling good about yourself.
And having confidence. And
Well, I think that there's more than meets the eye when you walk into not only your hair salon, but any place where people are rendering this service. They're not simply rendering a service that is labeled as such, but they're rendering a caring kind of thing. And I think we're going to need to take a break here in a moment, but when we do, I'd like to come back to the way you show care for people in other ways, that is beyond the call of duty. And as we pause here and take a break, we'd like to have you folks be sure and come back and join us as we continue our reflections upon faith at work as this pertains to hairstyling. Rejoin us, please.
Serving Austin means serving you. That has always been the primary goal of Austin Metropolitan Ministries. We are religion in action through the work of these organizations. Each plays a key role in making the capital city a better place to live, but we can't do it alone. Do you have some spare time, talents, or any resources that you can share? If you do, please call AMM at 472-7627 because serving Austin means serving you.
We continue our discussion with three persons who have had a unique role in serving their clients' needs in the field of hairstyling. Those from the Avalon Salon, Catherine and Annette and John. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about children and their self-image needs. And I think you maybe had a story about how you sometimes had to do a little mediating work in that regard.
It's terrible to get caught between the child wants this and the parent wants that. And if you do exactly what the child wants, they're going to be happy and the parents are going to be mad. Or if you do exactly what the parents want, they're going to be happy and the child's going to be mad. Sometimes
Figure out a compromise.
Yeah,
you have
a
to
little
try.
difficult to kind of bridge the gap.
Yeah, you get a little family counseling that way. Right.
Yeah, I had a client, and the daughter is preteen, so that's a real, you know, tender age for a young woman, young girl. And she wanted her hair shorter. The mother wanted her hair longer so she could wear a ponytail. And the only way I could figure out how to do it was, well, okay, if he needs a ponytail, we'll make it a low ponytail. And so she was able to have the length that she wanted, and the mother was able to have the ponytail she wanted the daughter to have. And so both were happy, and I was...
Well, I tell you, that's the behind-the-scenes drama that most of us don't see. But and it's really a kind of caring that in the church we would call ministry. I know that you can't see yourselves as being propagators of religion in your work. I mean, that's inappropriate. But the caring dimension and the personal touch that is so inseparable from faith, I think, finds its expression right where you are. And I say that in part because I know that from what you shared with me, Annette, that you've been able to reach out and help some folks who've suffered illness. Could you just give us any sense of what that was like?
Well, recently my assistant died in November, and we were able to be with him at his death. And being that close to death, I had to come to terms with it, and I've decided it was a gate. And thinking that life goes on, the spirit goes on, I'm able to relate to the people that are dying. And I think they like to hear that their spirit will continue, not that it ends there.
And that you're there with them.
Yes.
You're there for them.
I've had many friends die of AIDS, many stylists die of AIDS, so I had to come to terms with death also because, or I couldn't go on this earth.
Yeah.
And
so
that's how I deal with it.
your colleagues, you've been, it's not just to your clients, but to the way you work with others that were with you.
Yeah, you work side by side for years on end, you know, for over 3 years, over 5 years. You get real close to a person.
And I think the whole AIDS epidemic has focus for all of us.
Oh, yes.
The fact that death is taking so many younger people. It's not just elderly people that we're having to grieve over. And to be there with them with some sense of hope for yourself and for them. That's what you were saying. And
yes, exactly.
I think that if you don't mind, I'm going to use that in a sermon sometime.
Good. Yeah.
That's very good. And what about the, what's your experience, John, in terms of being just not sort of on the site, but beyond the immediate work situation?
Well, a lot of times you have to go outside of your office, so to speak, to you have clients and they become endeared to you and you become endeared to them, and you have a very caring relationship for that person. And then there are times that they may need you, say if they have to go in the hospital and they want you to come to the hospital and do their hair, or or to the funeral home and do a deceased person's hair because they can't bear to go and, like, I've had clients bring me a picture and say, this is what my husband looked like. Please go. He's been ill for months and he hasn't been taken care of, and you know, at his funeral I would like for him to, you know, look his best. And that's a real hard thing. You know, that's a real hard thing to come to grips with, to actually have to take care of that. But, you know, I mean, it's someone that you care about asking you to do this for you, and that's what comes off.
Well, I mean, we're talking about self-image in another dimension, aren't we? You know, I've sometimes just speculated with folks in the church about what is it that you choose to look like in heaven? You know, when in your life of course we're making something that you can't even visualize, but the whole thought that the closest thing on earth to what you're saying, I think, is you want to make this individual that I cared for and loved look his or her best.
Right. Right.
And that is, in a sense, an affirmation of people at their best otherwise.
Right.
And I know that when I've seen folks die in just miserable conditions, and if they've suffered Alzheimer's condition or some other that has disfigured them, or and that the affirmation is that they are, despite all that appearance, you know, in God's sight, they're precious and good and beautiful, and that we who are left behind need to be able to affirm that.
And remember them like that.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're doing that in a very concrete way. Have you, I think maybe you were telling me before the program that there was a time when you helped other people by kind of having a sign-up list to, how was that?
Yes,
work?
that was for our friend, our assistant Joe, that passed away last November, and the last 3 months of his life, he deteriorated pretty quickly, and the last 2 weeks he was at home, and his doctor recommended that he go into a nursing facility at the inn, and we just knew that you know, he wouldn't like that. That wasn't him. He was very independent. He worked and worked, and you know, to the very end, to the 2 weeks before he couldn't work anymore. And so we kept him at home, and we all took shifts. Annette was the chief of it all. She signed everybody up, whoever, you know, was comfortable with you know, dealing with his situation. And
the whole
that
salon
last week,
participated.
everybody participated in one way or another. And so he was able to stay home till the very end.
And be among people that he loved.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that was a way of showing your care in cooperation. It's not just individual to individual, but building a team.
Right.
That is a caring team. So I think that the extent to which that could be applied to anybody in any work situation where people feel connected, and more than just a working relationship, there's a personal relationship.
And
go ahead.
I was going to say, that's what we try to have in our place of work, is everybody together for the good of everybody that we touch.
And we don't just take care of our clients. I mean, we share with everybody else's clients.
Sure.
So if I'm not busy and I see somebody else's client that looks like they might need something, or you know, anything, any little thing at all, you know, I take initiative, and everybody does that with everybody else's client. And so they know that they can count on anybody there. And we don't have the competition that a lot of salons have. So if one of my clients is in need and I'm not available, you know, it's fine for them to go with Annette or John Michael or any of the other stylists. We all take care of...
You're not possessive about your clients.
No, we take care of everybody.
In the few minutes we have left, I need to share with you an image that just popped into my mind. And that is, if we were kind of having a biblical point of view as to who is the leading hairstylist in the Bible.
In the Bible.
Who would that be?
I don't know
okay.
who that would be.
Any of you can guess at this, but I'm going to say Delilah, because she took the scissors
Right.
and
She
cut,
took the strength.
and when she cut Samson's hair off, his strength drained out of him.
Right.
And all that that represents in terms of how our hair and our self-image and our self-esteem is all connected, and our power. And the more recent example of that was Michael Landon, you know, who was like in the Little House on the Prairie.
Oh, yeah, passed away.
And he, when he was at UCLA, I think it was, I think he was a javelin thrower, just an Olympic quality athlete. But he had this long hair. And this was back in the days when the coaches says, you can't do that. Athletes have short hair.
Right.
And he insisted that Landon cut off his hair, or have it done. And by George, he couldn't throw the javelin after that.
I didn't know that.
I didn't.
And I think, well, I'll bet you see instances of where people's strength is either diminished or gained as a result of...
Of their image.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's their image.
Yeah, the only compliments they ever get is on their hair, sometimes people tell me, and that's pretty grave.
Uh-huh. That's pretty what?
Grave.
Grave.
That's the only compliments they get is on their hair.
When it boils down to that.
And that means a lot to them.
Yeah.
So you better make their
They've
hair
got
look
that
good.
one thing
that they love.
about them that, that works for them.
And the other thing I've known is that people can feel depressed, and that they depend upon the way they look as far as their hair is concerned, that to give them, we talked about that before, the confidence.
Right.
And that spirit, I mean, it is whether the spirit is in a person or not in a person, has to do a lot with your confidence and where that comes from. And so somehow, in a way, you're leading them beyond the appearance. And I'm just trying to read into your situation here. You're trying to affirm them that they are worthy as a person.
That's correct.
And not necessarily just on the basis of what you're doing with them in their hair appearance.
That's correct. Their hair appearance is a bridge between, that's where you can give them what they need. I mean, you can't just, if they come in and they're depressed, they need something to get them out of it. Well, if you fix their hair and it looks good and they like it, all of a sudden they have something that they can come out of that depression with.
And I tell you, we're going to have to come out of this show right this very minute. We've run out of time, but I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed Catherine and Annette and John
Thank you for
being
inviting
here
us.
Thank you.
from Avalon Hair Salon. And we're glad for you folks to join us today on Austin Faith Dialogue, and hope that you'll be with us again next week. I'm Richard Thompson, thanking you for being with us, and peace be with you.
For more information, call Austin Metropolitan Ministries.